A mere 4 inches of earth can plunge the temperature of your roof by 50 degrees. Right now, those dark asphalt shingles are turning your summer power bills into an absolute nightmare. Our ancestors actually conquered the American frontier using this exact secret back in 1862. But before we break down the mechanics, I need to share the reality that big roofing companies conveniently leave out of their glossy sales brochures. On a blistering summer afternoon, traditional asphalt shingles easily skyrocket to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Yet, if you take that exact same roof and blanket it with 4 inches of soil and some wild prairie grass, it hovers right around 90 degrees on that identical sunny day. That massive 70-degree difference isn't due to high-tech foam insulation, reflective chemical paints, or wizardry. It is literally just dirt sitting on a roof. Your home's roof is the single largest heat magnet on your entire property. On a cloudless afternoon, those asphalt squares soak up roughly 90% of the sun's raw solar energy. The surface scorches first. Then that extreme heat bleeds into the wooden decking underneath, and from there your attic insulation drinks it all in. As evening rolls around, that trapped thermal energy continues to beam straight down through your ceiling, turning your upper floor into a giant, unwanted radiator long after dusk. Your AC unit is left battling 160-degree shingles for 10 grueling hours after the sun goes down. A living sod roof violently breaks that thermal chain in 3 distinct places at once. The first break happens right on the surface, and frankly, the physics feel entirely backwards. You might logically assume a dense blanket of dirt would act like a heavy winter sweater, locking the warmth inside the house. But a planted roof does the exact opposite. Through their root systems, plants suck up moisture, send it out through their leaves to evaporate, and actively transport heat away into the atmosphere as latent energy. For every single gallon of water a plant breathes out, it carries away around 8,700 British thermal units of heat. On a sweltering day, a modest green roof exhales 20 to 30 gallons of water for every 100 square feet. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of BTUs being mechanically flushed off the top of your house every single day, completely free of charge. By 5 in the afternoon on a brutal summer day, a west-facing exterior wall can hit 260 degrees. An unshaded roof climbs even further than that. Your cooling system is constantly at war with these boiling surfaces, and your cooling system always loses. The pioneers who settled the Great Plains in 1862 didn't have fiberglass rolls, asphalt paper, or motorized air conditioning. What they did have was the Homestead Act, granting them 160 acres of flat treeless dirt, along with wild grass. So, they constructed their shelters out of earthen blocks, topped them with soil roofs, and called them soddies. When the plains baked at 100 degrees, the inside of a soddie rested at a comfortable 70. When the brutal winter winds dropped the chill to 20 below zero, the interior held steady at 55. These earthen homes were so incredibly thermally efficient that pioneers documented burning a fraction of the firewood compared to their neighbors living in timber-framed houses who had to keep their cook stoves blazing half the day. The Nebraska State Historical Society actually holds an archive of more than 1,000 pictures showing these working soddies between 1,870 and 1,910. Every detailed architectural study of the ones still standing reveals identical patterns. Their walls were built 18 to 24 inches thick. The overhead cover was typically 6 inches of dense prairie turf packed over willow branches. While the outdoor weather violently swung by over 50 degrees, the inside of a pioneer sod house barely drifted 10 degrees. They thrived without power grids, without modern refrigerants, letting nothing but the earth right outside their doorstep handle the entire thermal load. But the reality is, that dirt is working much harder than those pioneers ever understood. A living roof isn't just one cooling mechanism. It is actually 3 independent cooling engines operating simultaneously. The first engine is what thermal physicists refer to as the earth buffer. Soil boasts an incredibly high specific heat capacity, sitting right around 0.83 British thermal units per pound for every degree Fahrenheit. If you lay a 4-inch layer of moist earth across a standard roof, a 500 square foot section will weigh in the neighborhood of 4,000 pounds. That massive 2-ton layer of dirt functions as a thermal flywheel. All day long, it lazily absorbs the sun's punishing rays, physically blocking the heat from ever penetrating into the attic below. Once the sun dips below the horizon, it simply radiates that stored warmth back up into the chilly night sky. The actual structure of the roof never gets hot to begin with. Without that heat pushing down, your attic remains a living room. Never accumulates that massive daytime thermal debt that forces your HVAC system to run all night long. The second thermal engine at play here is the living skin itself. While plants undergo photosynthesis, they are constantly transpiring water. As every single gallon of moisture evaporates from the foliage, it drags 8,700 British thermal units of heat away with it. A healthy mat of wild grass rooted in 4 inches of dirt will exhale between 20 and 30 gallons of water for every 100 square feet during a sweltering afternoon. That one natural process pulls more thermal energy off a building than a typical whole-house central air conditioning system from the 1990s could manage. When Chicago's City Hall installed a living green roof over half of its facility, they slashed their cooling expenses by $5,000 a year. The remaining half of the roof stayed classic black tar, and they kept paying maximum price for that side. It was the exact same structure, sitting under the exact same sun, generating 2 wildly different energy bills. The third cooling engine operates the slowest, yet over the long haul it might be the most crucial. Dirt and thick vegetation carry an emissivity rating of 94. What that means is that 94% of the long-wave thermal energy the roof soaks up all day is forcefully expelled back into the frigid night sky once the sun sets. On paper, standard asphalt shingles share a similar emissivity rating. The problem is, they start radiating that heat while their core temperature is still trapped at an agonizing 160 degrees. They continue pumping out heat for hours, forcing your air conditioner to run continuously. A living sod roof, however, starts radiating from a cool baseline of 70 or 80 degrees, meaning its radiation cycle is completely finished within an hour of dusk. Your AC unit simply shuts off because the roof itself is no longer hot. So, you have 3 distinct engines stacked together. The earth buffer slows the heat's arrival. The living skin uses water to literally pump heat into the air. And the night sky radiation finishes the task after dark. Absolutely none of this requires a plug. None of it needs ongoing maintenance, save for plucking a few weeds once a year. None of it fails under heavy strain. The concrete data backs up exactly what those frontier pioneers accidentally discovered. Let's look back at Chicago City Hall. They put that green roof on half the building in 2001 and rigorously tracked the data for years. On the absolute hottest summer day they recorded, the black tar control side skyrocketed to 169 degrees Fahrenheit. At the exact same time, on the exact same day, the green side registered just 91 degrees. That is a jaw-dropping 7-8 degree difference on a single building, sharing the same sky in the same city. That green half alone was responsible for those $5,000 in yearly air conditioning savings. You have to wonder why the modern residential roofing market completely ignores this. The truth is, it wasn't a corporate conspiracy, it was the railroads. Prior to 1870, the Great Plains lacked timber, so settlers had 0 options. Earth was the only available building supply. They carved out 1/6 by 2 4-inch blocks of prairie grass and stacked them up like masonry. They stretched willow branches for rafters and capped them with another 4 inches of inverted sod. Sure, they might drip a bit in a heavy downpour, but they easily survived massive blizzards, intense dust storms, and raging prairie fires that completely leveled the wooden homes nearby. But by the 1890s, the Northern Pacific Railway pushed its way to the western edge of those plains. With the trains came highly affordable pine lumber shipped from the Pacific Northwest, priced so low that everyday homesteaders could finally buy it. By the dawn of the 1900s, sod building was effectively dead. In just one generation, the foundational pioneer technique that built the American heartland was tossed aside for pine studs and asphalt shingles. Nobody outlawed sod, and nobody actively tried to erase it from history. The market simply shifted because moving wood on a train became cheaper than digging dirt out of the ground. However, the practice never completely vanished everywhere. In places where timber remained a luxury, the technique survived. Traditional Norse turf roofs, known in Norwegian as torvtak, have been continuously built and cared for across Norway, Iceland, and the Faroe Islands for well over a millennium. There are Norwegian farmhouses dating back to the 1700s that still proudly wear their original turf covers. Iceland protects their historical turf homes as cherished cultural landmarks. The Faroe Islands Museum actually keeps operational sod roofs on 3 18th-century buildings. The Sami herders stretching across northern Sweden and Finland have been utilizing peat homes without interruption for 1,000 years. None of these ancient structures rely on high-tech synthetic membranes. They simply use overlapping birch bark, tar paper, or layered turf to block the water. Fast forward to the 1980s, and Germany started rolling out the first major incentives for modern green roofs, expanding on technical standards developed back in 1975. Today, major hubs like Stuttgart, Hamburg, and Berlin dominate the nation, with strict regulations or strong incentives for green construction on new builds. Berlin even enforces a biotope area factor that mandates green roofs on specific new commercial properties. These European cities boast cooler summer streets, vastly improved stormwater management, and significantly longer lifespans for roofing membranes because the dirt completely shields the material from ultraviolet decay. The United States, unfortunately, never implemented anything close to this. The EPA released a massive report on urban heat islands in 2008, dedicating a whole chapter to green roofs and verifying every single fact I've mentioned in this video. The federal government literally published the exact science, but they never integrated it into standard building codes, leaving everyday Americans to foot the massive cooling bills. A few major commercial projects tried to break the mold anyway. Ford Motor Company's Rouge plant in Michigan blanketed 10.5 acres in Sedum back in 2003, holding the title for the world's largest green roof at the time. Walmart experimented with a handful of green-roofed stores between 2005 and 2012, only to quietly abandon the initiative. The hard data from all those projects was undeniably positive and heavily documented. We just never mustered the political motivation to make it the standard. Now, here is the part that should absolutely infuriate any homeowner currently paying a summer utility bill. You do not have to rip off your entire house's roof to take advantage of this physics loophole. A tiny isolated structure works perfectly, and you can build one for around $30. The absolute minimum viable green roof is just a basic 4x8 shed, a detached garage, a tiny house, or even a backyard chicken coop. The structural math is surprisingly straightforward. Completely waterlogged soil weighs in the neighborhood of 110 pounds per cubic foot, spreading a 4-inch layer across a 4x8 surface piles on roughly 370 pounds, plus the minor weight of the vegetation and any temporary rainwater. The vast majority of standard pitch sheds are already engineered to withstand heavy winter snow loads, which easily surpass the temporary weight of a wet sod layer. If your backyard structure was framed to survive snow country, it can almost always support a dirt roof without a single extra 2x4 of reinforcement. The actual construction profile requires just 5 simple layers from bottom to top. Layer 1 is your base roof decking, usually standard plywood or OSB. Layer 2 is a continuous sheet of heavy-duty pond liner or synthetic rubber roofing, with absolutely no seams right in the middle. EPDM rubber is the industry gold standard here. It runs about $1 a square foot at any home improvement store and will easily survive for 40 years when shielded by dirt. Layer 3 is a 1-inch strip of pea gravel running right along the bottom edge, purely to give the runoff water a place to escape. Layer 4 is a single sheet of landscape geotextile fabric to stop the soil from washing down and clogging up that gravel. Finally, layer 5 is 4 inches of sandy loam dirt planted with native prairie grass or hardy sedum. That entire 4-inch profile on a 100-square-foot shed weighs less than an average adult standing on the roof. The shed won't even realize it's up there. But water management is where most weekend builders completely ruin the project. Letting water pool on a dirt roof triggers 2 massive failures at the same time. First, it's a structural hazard. Soaking wet dirt is 40% heavier than bone-dry dirt. A poorly drained flat roof can trap that heavy standing water for days following a hard storm. Second, it's a biological death sentence. Most hardy sedums can handle a quick flood, but if their roots are submerged for 72 straight hours, they simply drown and die. To fix drainage on a flat build, You just need a subtle 1-inch gradient pitching down toward a gravel gutter strip on one side. On a slanted pitched roof, gravity handles the heavy lifting, pushing water naturally down into that bottom gravel edge. If you skip the drainage layer, your expensive plants will rot away by the end of your first rainy spring. Speaking of plants, your selection is critical. Native Sedum is the undisputed champion because it laughs at both bone-dry droughts and heavy standing water, asks for zero irrigation after its first year, and easily handles any American climate zone, from the freezing winters of Maine to the baking deserts of Arizona. Specific strains like Sedum spurium, Sedum acre, and Sedum kamchaticum are the holy trinity that German contractors roll out by the millions of square feet. Wild prairie grass is an excellent choice if your roof gets blasted by full sun all day. If you buy pre-grown Sedum mats, you're looking at about $12 a square foot retail. But if you buy plug trays, they run about $2 a piece. One tiny plug will aggressively spread and cover an entire square foot in just one growing season. To cover a 4x8 shed with 30 plugs, you're spending around $60. And if you snip cuttings from a friend's existing Sedum garden, it costs you absolutely nothing. That rubber membrane buried underneath, it has a solid 40-year lifespan when tucked safely beneath 4 inches of earth. If you left that exact same rubber exposed to the sun on a standard flat roof, the harsh ultraviolet rays would bake it and crack it in 20 to 30 years. The dirt literally doubles the roof's life by acting as a total UV shield. As for your maintenance routine, you might pull a stray weed once every spring, and maybe hit it with the garden hose in midsummer, only if your region is suffering a historic drought. That is the complete list of long-term expenses. So, what about scaling this up to a full residential home? It is completely doable, but it demands an actual structural engineer's review, a much thicker commercial liner, and a highly calculated drainage plan. Converting a standard home runs about $10 to $15 per square foot of green roof. For an average 1,500 square foot house, you are staring at a $15,000 to $22,000 upfront bill. That is a massive chunk of real money to hand over on day one. But you have to compare it against the traditional alternatives over a 30-year timeline. A brand new central AC unit costs around $6,000. A standard shingle roof replacement is roughly $12,000. Both of those traditional systems will inevitably fail and need replacing on the exact same 5-year cycle. Over 3 decades, the green roof absolutely beats them combined on a total cost basis. The problem is, most homeowners never run the numbers that far ahead. People would rather smooth out the cost of a new roof and an AC unit on a monthly credit card payment than drop a large capital investment up front. The smartest move you can make is to start small. Go build one on a backyard shed this weekend. On the very next 90-degree afternoon, take a thermometer, check your house's boiling asphalt shingles, and then check the cool dirt on your shed. You will see that 70-degree thermal gap right in your own hand. Once you see the physics actually working, then you can decide if the math makes sense for your main house. And if you think a mere 4 inches of soil dropping your roof temperature by 50 degrees is impressive, just wait until you find out what a $300 buried pipe can do to absolutely slash your power bill. That video is right here.